Hi there. I wanted to welcome you to Community Development 502, Communities and Natural Resources. I wanted to start out with just introducing myself, since this is our first class, and our first module, rather. I will be your instructor for 502. I noticed there's a couple of students on the class list that I've had in a former class, but welcome to you guys, and welcome to all of you that I haven't met before. I wanted to just give myself a brief introduction and then introduce the class and then introduce the syllabus, and we'll see where we get to with that. I earned my doctorate in planning from the University of Southern California. I've worked at the University of Louisville in the Environmental Finance Center, and I was an assistant professor at Iowa State University, and then I left academia in 2010. I've been working as a planning and environmental consultant since then, which means I do various things on a contract basis. I'm currently, my main contract is that I'm senior manager of the Columbia Basin Watershed Network, and I do other contracts in strategic planning and organizational consulting, and I'm also working on some other distance education projects along with this kind of major commitment with Iowa State. Very happy to be teaching again. Today I want to talk about the class and the overall design and the context of the program, and then I'll go through the syllabus and talk about some of the structural or organizational decisions. So in my thinking about this class, it's CDev 502 is a core class in the community development program, as those of you in the program know. To me, this means that I have certain core learning outcomes that I'm responsible for, or that rather that the students in this class are responsible for, and I'm trying to create an opportunity for you to achieve those core learning outcomes. So those are applicable to all of all the work of community development professionals, and so that the skills that we focus on should also be equally applicable to all or nearly all community development professional contexts. So this means that the core learning outcomes you should be able to apply in all or nearly all community development practitioner contexts. So where I think that applies is that, or the fundamental idea that I was thinking about is that a community development practitioner should be able to guide their community towards what's a good natural resource decision-making process. The kind of thing that will result in good decisions and good actions. So that's where we're going to start. Actually, what makes a good decision? This week, we're actually going to read a couple of articles that talk about the elements of what makes a good decision from the community and natural resources perspective and from more general natural resources perspective. So is the action efficient in dollar terms? Is it effective? Can we monitor its effectiveness? Can we adapt? Does it leave us enough room to adjust? Or does it commit us to a path where the consequences of our being wrong, which is typically an element of decisions, is that we're typically wrong in some way, or we haven't foreseen everything. So there's a way that, there's probably something we could do better. So does it commit us to a path where the consequences of our being wrong for the moment are unbearably risky? And, for community development practitioners generally, what are those process elements? Does the process and the decision strengthen the community, or does it bleed or leak money, expertise, and knowledge to some center that's not in the community? So the key ability, really, given the complexity and the variety of things that are in the context of communities and natural resource decision making, the key ability is the ability to distinguish between different decision-making frameworks, and recommend a good process for making decisions around natural resource problems that's appropriate for the community and the problem. So that's really the core idea, and all the the readings that are assigned and the assignments are designed to help you build towards that ability. As most of you know, because you're distance learners in some way, distance learning is kind of tough. Most of you are fitting in your coursework into a working schedule. I know the students I worked with last semester had all kinds of other commitments. So I try to design the class around that as much as I can, so that the course is in kind of short segments wherever possible for new materials. So these short segments then need to be integrated into your learning, so that each paper and each final assignments are opportunities for you to integrate material from prior weeks into knowledge that's actually your own. And that's what I mean by that is knowledge that you can actually use or apply in a problem context that you're having in your life, in your community work. So you should expect to spend about 5 hours a week on this class every week, with some weeks requiring more time, especially the weeks in which short papers and final assignments and stuff like that are due. Some classes, some weeks you might spend less time than that, but most of them I would think you need to schedule 5 hours in somewhere. So again, like I said, the class is designed around this core competency that we're going to build towards. And so as a course designer, you have to make certain choices about what you need to learn in order to get to that goal. So what it really means is you'll need to be introduced to a range of decision-making frameworks so that you can think about what their pluses and minuses are and recommend a good one. So there's such a range. The students in this class are in a range of natural resource situations. Your communities have different investments or abilities to make decisions. They have different specific natural resource contexts. So we're going to be using some of those. We'll be using case study situations from a range of those contexts. But what this means is that we're going to be going through the science kind of in a way kind of really quickly. So what it means is that most of the time we're going to get at least part of the science at least partly wrong. And so we just have to sort of face that as in order to get to this kind of context. That's the piece that we're going to just kind of accept. One of the frustrating things about natural resource decision making is that you can be working on a problem for a while, and the science will be uncertain, and then even after you assemble all the right professionals and you make a decision and make an approach and you set up the monitoring, you'll often find that there's some unintended consequences of something, either where you got the science wrong or there's just something you didn't consider, or and that's easy to see. Just looking around us, we can see that many of the decisions that we make in our communities have unintended negative environmental consequences. And even when our intentions are good, we make mistakes. So the way that we're incorporating that into this class is in that consideration of how do you design a process that accounts for that, what I'd say is just a fact. We get certain things wrong. And how do you get as much expertise into the situation as you can, but still have the mechanisms in place for when you get what you didn't foresee. So in this class, we're going to focus on the decision-making frameworks and on the values in the process, and just try to use a basic understanding of natural resources science. in real life community decision context, there's actually no decision where one person is going to actually understand all the science. So part of good natural resources decision making is knowing how to scope or bring in the expertise you need and where to draw those lines, and how to account for the error that is going to be in the process unavoidably. So we're going to be developing a sort of basic scientific literacy, which is how do we move forward without knowing everything, but knowing that we don't know everything, and how do we use as much, how do we choose what is good science to rely on, and what is just the junk propaganda that there's a infinite supply of junk propaganda that we now have to contend with. It's so cheap to publish. There used to be sort of a internal expense preventing the production of junk, but now it's very cheap to produce junk. So there's a lot of it, and how do you discern what's junk and what isn't is a really important part of community development practitioner and scientific literacy. So that's kind of the key things I wanted to just introduce in the way of the ideas behind the class and why I made some of the design choices I did. And in my next little segment, I'll introduce you to the syllabus. So I'll just